Today, we are going to review the essential steps for the installation of the IRADIMED FMD1 and the wireless RALU display. We will focus on mounting the TrueSense top rail, mounting the FMD1 side rails, and mounting the wireless remote alarm logging unit or RALU controller. It is recommended that your facility's biomed department complete the installation of the FMD1 and the installer unbox all components and place them in a safe and easily accessible location to aid in the installation. Suggested tools for installing the FMD1. To install the IRADIMED FMD1, the installer should have the following tools on hand: a standard tape measure, a flathead screwdriver, a PVC cutter, a set of wire cutters, a rubber hammer, glue dots, a pencil, and alcohol-free cleaning solution with wipes. Some optional tools that are suggested are a drill with a 3/16 drill bit, number 10 wall anchors with 1-inch screws, and a Phillips head screwdriver. What's in the box? Before getting started with the installation, the installer should unbox all parts to make the process faster. The box will contain one RALU and RALU antenna, one TrueSense top rail, 4 side rail segments, which includes 2 short and 2 long, 2 side rail lenses, 1 AC power supply with wire clips, 1 wire bundle, 4 rail caps, 1 angled wire channel accessory pack, and finally 1 set of wire channel segments. Step 1. Evaluate and prepare the mounting location. Before the FMD1 can be mounted, the installer must evaluate the installation area. The installation area needs to be at least 2 inches wide in a continuous loop from the floor to the top of the door jamb, horizontally across the header and down the other side. Ideally, this loop is all in one vertical plane. However, the overhead top rail can be as much as 2.5 inches in front or behind the plane of the magnetic sensors. The 2-inch space for the rails needs to be clear of the door and its handle, as well as any items attached to the doorway, such as corner bumpers, signs, and other devices which may need to be removed prior to installation. The installer must then locate the power outlet nearest to the MRI doorway. The AC power supply for the RALU is 15 feet long, so the RALU controller will need to be mounted less than 10 feet from the power outlet on the same side. Additionally, the RALU controller will be mounted within 2 feet from the door and no more than 60 inches from the floor. If the mounting surface has a textured wallpaper or is unable to hold adhesives, the installer will need to use mounting screws in place of the adhesive mounting tape. Please reference the enclosed installation drawings and installation manual if any additional information is required. Once the evaluation is complete, the installer will use the cleaning solution and cloths to thoroughly clean the mounting areas for the FMD1, RALU, and the wire channels and allow to air dry. In the last step of preparation, the installer must measure 10 inches from the floor and mark each side of the door frame where the bottom of the magnetic sensor rails will mount. Finally, the installer will measure to the center of the doorway's header and make a mark. The mounting location has now been cleaned, marked, and is ready for installation. Step 2. Mounting the TrueSense top rail. The first step in the FMD1's installation is to mount the TrueSense top rail on the doorway's header. First, the installer will align the TrueSense top rail so the arrows face the MRI room door, centered on the installer's mark on the header. Next, peel off the adhesive liner on the adhesive mounting tape and mount the top rail by sticking the rail to the doorway's header and holding for approximately 1 minute to ensure a secure adhesion. Step 3. Mounting the FMD1 side rails. The installer must first identify the master rail, which has a sticker on the back of both sections. The installer will connect the short rail section to the longer bottom sections by inserting the yellow friction coupling tang of the short rail into the receiving end of the longer rail. The installer will use the rubber hammer to tap the short section until it is flush with the long section. Next, slide the top section of the circuit board into place so the male connector is flush with the female receiver. The installer will then connect the power cable to the connector at the bottom of the longer rail section and slide the side rail lenses into place. The master rail will be mounted on the RALU side of the doorway. The installer will then repeat the assembly process for the secondary rail. Once the secondary rail is assembled, the installer will mount the rails onto the clean door frame by peeling the adhesive liner and sticking each rail to the door frame with the bottom of each rail positioned at the mark made at 10 inches from the floor. The installer will hold in position for approximately 1 minute, ensuring a secure adhesion. The installer will then connect the top rail's wires to the connector at the top of each side rail and slide the side rail lenses into place. Step 4. Mounting the RALU controller. First, the installer must decide if they need to mount the RALU controller using screws or adhesive mounting tape. If mounting with screws, remove the cover bezel to locate the corner holes for screw mounting to the wall. The installer will use the RALU as a template to mark the wall for pilot holes. Next, the installer will drill pilot holes and insert wall anchors into each pilot hole. The installer will then line up the RALU controller's mounting holes and drive the screws into the anchors. If securing with adhesive mounting tape, the installer will peel the adhesive liner off the mounting tape and position the RALU at the desired location. The installer will hold in position for approximately 1 minute, ensuring a secure adhesion. Finally, the installer will secure the RALU's antenna by placing it on the threaded stud and rotating until tightened. The FMD1 is now mounted, ready to be wired, and have initial setup completed. For more information, visit www.iradamed.com. For technical support, please call us at 407-677-8022.